She had flour on her apron, blisters on her feet, and exactly $4.37 left in her bank account when she made the worst, or maybe the best, decision of her life. She hung up on him. Not a wrong number. Not an accident. She heard the coldness in his voice, heard the way he spoke to her like she was nothing, like she was furniture that had learned to dial a telephone, and she pressed the red button. Done. Finished. Silence. What she did not know was that no one had ever done that to Kang Jae-won. Not once in 38 years. Not a soldier, not a senator, not a rival who wanted to live. And now a waitress at a corner diner in Los Angeles had just ended the call. The SUVs were already moving before she set the phone back on the counter. Morning had started like every other morning at Rosie's Diner on Figueroa Street. The kind of place that smelled permanently of burnt coffee and maple syrup, where the vinyl booths had been patched so many times with mismatched tape that they looked like abstract art. Chloe Diallo arrived at 5:45, same as always, her natural hair wrapped tight beneath a headscarf she would undo in the back room, her coat pulled close against the October chill crawling off the street. She was 26 years old, Senegalese-American, the daughter of a seamstress mother who worked 2 jobs in Dakar before bringing Chloe to California on a tourist visa that had quietly become a life. Chloe was tall, full-figured, with deep brown skin the color of rich earth after rain, high cheekbones that her mother called her grandmother's inheritance, and eyes so dark and steady that people often felt, uncomfortably, that she was reading something in them they had not meant to leave visible. She was not supposed to be a waitress. She had a business degree from Cal State Dominguez Hills, a minor in accounting, and a laptop full of job applications that had produced nothing but automated rejection emails for 8 months. So she worked the breakfast and lunch shift at Rosie's, went home, applied for more jobs, ate whatever her mother had left in the pot, and started again. The morning rush came and went. She refilled coffee, ran eggs over easy to table 4, argued politely with an old man named Gerald who always claimed she had given him the wrong change even when he had counted it himself. By 10:30 the diner had thinned out. Chloe was wiping down the counter when the landline rang. Rosie's had a landline. Nobody called it. Mostly it was food suppliers or the occasional person trying to reach a number that no longer existed. Chloe picked it up without looking away from the counter she was cleaning. Rosie's Diner, how can I help you? The voice on the other end was low. Very low. Korean accented English, each word delivered with the unhurried certainty of a man who had never once been told to wait. I need a reservation. Private dining. Tonight. 7 o'clock. The room in the back. Chloe stopped wiping. Sir, we don't have a private dining room. We have booths and a counter. Pause. Not a confused pause. A dangerous one. I was told this location has a back room available for private use. Whoever told you that was mistaken. We have a storage room and a bathroom. Neither of them seek people for dinner. Another pause. Longer this time. Do you know who you are speaking to? And this was the moment. This was the $4.37 moment. Chloe looked at the receiver. She thought about Gerald and his phantom wrong change. She thought about the rejection email she had gotten at 2 in the morning from a company she had applied to 3 times. She thought about her feet, which had been hurting since 6 a.m. She thought about the way this man's voice carried the specific texture of someone who had never once considered that the person on the other end of the line was a human being with a full life. No, she said. And it doesn't matter. We still don't have a private dining room. Put your manager on the phone. My manager is in the back and she's busy. If you'd like to make a regular reservation for one of our booths, I can help you with that. Otherwise, I hope you find what you're looking for. And she hung up. She set the receiver down, picked up her cloth, and went back to wiping the counter. Her coworker Destiny, a 22-year-old from Inglewood who had seen everything and was surprised by nothing, looked at her from across the room. Who was that? Wrong number, Chloe said. Destiny raised one eyebrow and said nothing. 8 minutes later, the first SUV pulled up outside. It was black. Tinted windows. Clean in a way that suggested it had been washed that morning and would be washed again tomorrow. Then a second one pulled up behind it. Then a third. Chloe looked up from the table she was resetting and watched through the window as 4, 5, 6 black vehicles lined the street in front of the diner with the calm, unhurried precision of a military convoy that had nowhere urgent to be because it had already arrived exactly where it intended. Gerald, who had been nursing his 3rd cup of coffee, put the cup down very slowly. Destiny walked to the window, looked out, and said quietly and with great feeling, "Oh no." The doors opened. Men in dark suits emerged, not rushing, not reaching for anything, just standing. Creating a perimeter. The way people stand when they are used to creating perimeters. A few of the remaining customers in the diner went very still. Someone at the back booth quietly put money on their table and edged toward the emergency exit. Chloe stood with a handful of silverware and watched the last SUV door open. He stepped out like the others hadn't happened. Like the 10 vehicles and the 12 suited men were simply the atmosphere he required to breathe. He was tall, somewhere around 6'2", with a kind of lean, broad-shouldered build that suggested discipline rather than vanity. His suit was charcoal gray, impeccably fitted, his jet-black hair pushed back from a face that was all sharp angles and controlled expression, high cheekbones, a jaw that looked like it had been decided upon by someone who took their work seriously, dark eyes that were already moving across the front of the diner like they were reading a floor plan. He looked, Chloe thought with a strange detachment, like the kind of man who never raised his voice because he had never needed to. He walked through the front door of Rosie's diner. The little bell above the door chimed. He stopped and looked at her. Directly at her. Not at the room, not at the other staff. At her. "You hung up on me," he said. His voice in person was the same as on the phone. Oh, steady. The voice of a man making an observation, not an accusation, because he had enough confidence in the outcome that he did not need the energy of anger. "You called the wrong number," Chloe said, because she was not going to pretend she hadn't hung up on him or that it had been an accident. "We don't have a private dining room." "I know that now." "Then we're in agreement." He looked at her for a moment longer than was comfortable. She held it. She did not know why. Every rational instinct she had was producing sirens and flashing lights and the general advisory that a sensible person steps back when confronted with a man who arrives in 10 SUVs to respond to a dropped phone call. But there was something in the way he was looking at her, not with anger, not with the cold contempt she had expected, that held her in place. He looked almost like something had surprised him. Like he had arrived ready for one thing and found something else entirely. "Sit down," he said. "I'm working. I'll buy the diner." "That's not how that works." His eyes didn't move. "I've bought larger things this week." Destiny appeared from the kitchen doorway, looked at the man, looked at Chloe, and made a small, helpless gesture that communicated everything. Rosie herself, Margaret Rosie Nguyen, 63 years old and afraid of nothing except her cardiologist, had emerged from the back at some point and was standing just behind Destiny, looking at the man in the charcoal suit with an expression Chloe had never seen on her before. It was close to awe. Chloe set the silverware down on the nearest table. "I'll take my break," she said to Rosie. Then to him, "You've got 10 minutes. She went to the booth in the corner, the one closest to the kitchen door, the one she always chose because it had 2 exit routes, and she sat down. He came and sat across from her. Up close, the coldness she had read in his face from across the room resolved into something more complicated. There were shadows under his eyes. A small scar beneath his left jaw that had been there long enough to silver. His hands, when he folded them on the table, were the hands of a man who had used them for things that tables like this one were not designed to discuss. "Kang Jae-won," he said. "I know who you are," she said. She didn't, not exactly, but she knew the shape of men like him. She had grown up in a neighborhood that shared a wall with a Korean-owned import business that everyone on the block understood was not primarily about imports. Something shifted in his expression. "What do you know?" "Enough to know that most people don't hang up on you and find you in their diner 8 minutes later." 9 minutes, he said. There was traffic on the 110. She almost laughed. She stopped herself, but the almost was visible and he saw it, and something in him, something she could not have named but could see, the way you can see the wind without seeing it, relaxed slightly. "Why are you here?" she said. "Because you hung up on me." "I already explained." "No one hangs up on me," he said. Not with outrage. With the quiet, declarative tone of someone stating a fact of physics. "In 15 years. Not once. And I needed to see the person who did. And now you've seen me." "Yes. So we're done." "No," he said. "We're not." She looked at him. "What do you want from me, Mr. Kang?" He was quiet for a moment. Not the silence of someone searching for an answer. The silence of someone deciding how much of one to give. "I had a meeting tonight that required a discreet location. The man who gave me this address gave me the wrong one. I need to know if he did it by mistake or on purpose. That has nothing to do with me." "No. But you interest me." Chloe leaned back. "I'm a waitress." "You're a woman with a business degree who works at a diner and hangs up on people who inconvenience her," he said. The inconvenience was not her problem. She identified it clearly, stated the correct information, offered an alternative, and terminated the call when the call became unproductive. He paused. "I haven't had someone manage me that competently in 3 years. The silence that followed had a texture to it. Chloe kept her face neutral with the effort of someone who has had a lot of practice keeping their face neutral. "I'm going to need you to explain what that means," she said. "It means I want to offer you a job." Later that evening, after he was gone and the SUVs had pulled away with the same quiet efficiency with which they had arrived, and Gerald had left a bigger tip than usual in what appeared to be a gesture of solidarity, Chloe sat in the parking lot of her apartment building with her engine off and her hands in her lap and thought about the business card he had left on the table. Heavy cardstock. One line of text in Korean and English. Kang Group. A phone number. And below it, in handwriting that was surprisingly clean for a man who probably had people to write things for him, "Call before Thursday." She should throw it away. She understood that. She understood it with the same clarity with which she understood that the sun was currently behind the Santa Monica Mountains and that her mother was upstairs making thigh-badayan and that somewhere in this city there was a version of her future that did not involve Kang Jae-won. She put the card in her pocket and went inside. She did not call before Thursday. She called on Wednesday at 11:47 at night, because she had received her 8th rejection email in 10 days, this one for a junior analyst position she had been quietly certain she was qualified for, and the rejection had contained the phrase, "We've decided to move forward with candidates whose experience more closely aligns," which she had read 4 times because she could not locate the flaw in her application and that was somehow worse than if she could. He answered on the second ring. "I'll take the job," she said. "But I have conditions." A pause that felt like a smile. "Tell me your conditions." "A contract. Written. Specific about what I'm doing and what I'm not doing. A salary that reflects my actual qualifications. And if at any point I determine that what you're asking me to do falls outside what I agreed to, I walk. No questions, no consequences." "Agreed," he said without hesitation. That should have been a warning sign. When powerful men agree to your conditions without negotiating, it means they are confident those conditions will not protect you from what they actually want. Chloe had enough sense to know this. She said yes anyway. The Kang Group offices occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in Koreatown, the kind of building that announced wealth without apologizing for it. When Chloe arrived for her first day she wore the best blazer she owned, a structured navy one her mother had pressed 3 times the night before, and her natural hair loose around her shoulders, big and unapologetic, because she had decided on the drive over that if this was going to go wrong she was going to go wrong as exactly herself. A man named Park Sung-hyun met her in the lobby. Early 30s, efficient movements, the look of someone who had learned to be invisible by choice rather than circumstance. He was Kang Jae-won's right hand, she would learn, which meant he was the person who turned decisions into actions and absorbed the friction of the world on behalf of a man who had no patience for friction. "Mr. Kang will see you at noon," Sung-hyun said, guiding her toward the elevator. "Until then I'll walk you through the operational side of what we need." What they needed, as Sung-hyun explained it, was a financial analyst with clean hands to review the legitimate side of their portfolio. Real estate holdings, 3 restaurant chains, a logistics company, and 2 tech investments, and produce quarterly reports accurate enough to satisfy the city's increasingly curious financial oversight boards. The Kang Group had lawyers and accountants. What they did not have was someone with the specific combination of business fluency, cultural literacy, and, Sung-hyun paused here and looked at her with the focused appraisal of a man measuring something, personal resilience, required to navigate both sides of the organization without being broken by the seam between them. "You mean someone who can see enough of the real picture to do the work," Chloe said, "but who won't be destroyed by what they see." Sung-hyun looked at her. "Yes. And Mr. Kang thinks that's me. Mr. Kang thinks that's possible. He is rarely wrong." She did not see Kang Jae-won until noon as promised. He was in a corner office on the 32nd floor with floor-to-ceiling windows that looked west toward the ocean and a desk that was almost entirely clear except for a single open folder, a glass of water, and a photograph placed face down that she noticed immediately and did not mention. He looked the same as he had in the diner. Same controlled stillness. Same quality of attention, like the room organized itself slightly around wherever he placed his focus. He was in a dark suit, no tie, his collar open by one button in a way that looked like discipline relaxing rather than carelessness. He gestured to the chair across from his desk without greeting her. "You didn't call until Wednesday night," he said. "I wanted to think about it." "What made you decide?" She considered lying. Considered the polished, strategic version of the truth. Then she said, "A rejection email." He looked at her steadily. "From?" "A company that didn't see the value in what I was offering." "Their loss," he said, with such flat certainty that it took her a moment to process it as a compliment rather than a statement of fact. What exactly am I analyzing? She asked. Specifically, he told her. He was direct about it, more direct than she had expected. The legitimate business interests were real and significant. The reports she would produce were for actual oversight boards. What she would not do, what fell outside her contract entirely, was touch anything related to the operational infrastructure that funded those legitimate businesses. That part of the house, as he put it, had its own accountants, its own lawyers, its own logic. Her job existed in the light. She was not being hired to make the dark look bright. She was being hired because the light was real and needed someone competent to account for it. She appreciated the precision of that. She did not entirely believe it, but she appreciated it. One more condition, she said. His eyes did not change. You said that was all of them. I thought of another one. I work in the satellite office on the 28th floor, not this one. I need to be able to do my job without, she chose the word carefully, adjacency to things I'm not supposed to know about. He looked at her for a moment. Agreed, he said. Anything else? Yes. What's in the photograph? The room went very quiet. He looked at the photograph lying face down on his desk. Then at her. His expression did not change, but something beneath it did. A shift in the deep weather of him, something that passed too quickly to name. My wife, he said. She died 14 months ago. Chloe held his gaze. I'm sorry. He nodded once. The kind of nod that closes a door without slamming it. You start Monday, he said. The first 3 weeks were ordinary in the way that the beginning of dangerous things often are. She came in at 8, worked through the financial structures of 4 different real estate portfolios, produced a preliminary report that Sung-hyun read twice and sent to Jae-won without comment, which Chloe understood to mean it was good. She had lunch at her desk, left at 6, took the bus home because parking in Koreatown was a war she did not have the energy for, and answered her mother's questions about the new job with the filtered truth that she was working as a financial analyst for a large property company. She saw Kang Jae-won twice during those 3 weeks. Once in the elevator, briefly, where he told her the preliminary report was thorough and she said thank you, and neither of them said anything else because the elevator reached her floor. Once when she stayed late on a Thursday and passed his office at 9 p.m. and saw through the glass wall that he was at his desk, his jacket off, reading something in what looked like the particular loneliness of a man who has forgotten what it feels like to leave work because work has become the entire geography of his life. She did not stop. She went home. The 4th week things shifted. It started small. A message through Sung-hyun. Mr. Kang would like your assessment of the West Side holdings by Thursday. Then a second message the next day. Mr. Kang would like to discuss the Inglewood logistics numbers with you directly. Then Jae-won himself appearing in the doorway of her office on a Tuesday morning with 2 cups of coffee, setting one on her desk without asking if she wanted it, sitting in the chair across from her and saying, "Walk me through your concerns about the Century City property." She walked him through it. He listened the way very few people listened, not waiting for her to finish so he could speak, but actually tracking the thread of her reasoning, asking questions at exactly the right moments, pushing back on 2 points that were genuinely worth pushing back on. By the end of an hour she had revised her assessment twice and it was better for it. This became a pattern. Not daily. Every few days. He would come to her office, they would work, and then he would leave. The coffee became a constant. Always 2 cups, always the same, because apparently Sung-hyun had been asked to note her order on her first day and the information had been retained with the same thoroughness applied to financial data. She told herself it was professional. It was professional. There was nothing unprofessional about any of it. Except the way he looked at her sometimes when she was in the middle of explaining something and she glanced up and caught his eyes, and the look was not the focused attention of a man analyzing a report. It was something else. Something older and more complicated that he closed off the moment he saw that she had noticed it. She told herself she had misread it. Then the gala happened. The Kang Group's annual donor event was held at a hotel in Beverly Hills whose ballroom ceiling was a single sheet of gold leaf that cost more than Chloe's childhood home. She had not known she was expected to attend until Sung-hyun sent her a calendar invite on a Wednesday for a Saturday event and added, in the notes field, "Mr. Kang requires your presence for the portfolio presentation segment. Dress is formal." She called her mother, who got excited, which was both touching and slightly complicating. Her mother found a dress. It was red. Not the red of a safety warning or a stop sign, but the red of something older, deep, warm, with a shimmer to it that moved when she moved, a halter neckline fitted through the waist and hips, skimming to the floor. Her mother had been saving it for a wedding that had not yet materialized. She pressed it herself twice and made Chloe try it on 3 times before she was satisfied. "You are your grandmother," her mother said softly, fixing the back. Chloe looked at herself in the mirror. She looked, she thought, like someone who had decided to take up space. She arrived at the hotel and Sung-hyun met her at the entrance to manage the evening's logistics. The ballroom was full, 300 people in the specific constellation of wealth and power that Kang Jae-won occupied, the space between legitimate empire and the kind of influence that does not appear on any public record. She moved through it with Sung-hyun at her side, focusing on the work, the presentation slides she had prepared, the 2 board members she was to brief on the Century City projections, the numbers she knew cold. She did not see Kang Jae-won until the 4th time she scanned the room. He was across the ballroom in a black suit, speaking to 2 men she did not recognize. His back was mostly to her. Then one of the men said something and Jae-won turned slightly, scanning the room with the automatic surveillance of a man who always knows where the exits are, and his eyes found her. He stopped talking. Not mid-sentence. At the end of one. But he stopped, and his eyes stayed on her, and she watched from across the room as something moved through his expression that she had not seen before. It was not the cold appraisal of their first meeting. It was not the focused professionalism of their office sessions. It was, and she registered this with a kind of alarm that she immediately tried to file away, something undone. Something that looked like a man encountering something he had not prepared for. He crossed the room. The 2 men he had been speaking to watched him go, then looked at her, then looked at each other. He stopped in front of her. He was close enough that she could see the precise line of his jaw, the faint shadows that were always under his eyes regardless of the hour. "You look," he started and then stopped. Chloe waited. "You look," he said again more carefully, "like someone I should have given more warning to. Sung-hyun gave me 4 days. "I mean warning," he said, "in general." She did not know what to say to that. She felt heat in her chest that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. He held her gaze for another moment, then said more evenly, "The board members are near the East Bar. Sung-hyun will introduce you. Your presentation is at 9. "I know," she said. "I know you know," he said. He looked at her one more time, that look, the one she kept telling herself she had misread, and then he turned and walked back to the men he had left. She gave the presentation at 9. It went well. She answered 3 difficult questions cleanly, left a strong impression on both board members, and did not once look at Kang Jae-won where he stood at the back of the room watching her with his arms folded and his face composed and something in his eyes that she was running out of alternate explanations for. The trouble started at 10:30. His name was David Shin, late 40s, import company, the kind of man who had learned to use charm as a negotiation strategy and had confused the strategy with a personality. He was not dangerous, not in any meaningful sense. He was simply a man who had had 2 glasses of champagne and decided that Chloe was an interesting variable in his evening. He found her near the window. He was pleasant enough at first. She was polite back. He asked what she did. She told him briefly. He asked her to elaborate. She did briefly. He complimented the red dress in a way that was angled slightly wrong, that had just enough weight behind it to feel like he was leaving something unsaid. She managed the conversation with professional patience. The kind of patience that is not warmth but resembles it enough to forestall escalation. Then David Shin reached out and touched her arm. Not aggressively. Just the easy, thoughtless touch of a man who had never had to consider whether his touch was invited. A hand appeared. It came from her right side, just into her peripheral vision, and it landed on David Shin's shoulder with the precise, measured pressure of a hand that is saying something clearly and quietly and without the need for witnesses. Jae-won stood just behind and to the right of Shin, his posture unchanged, his expression composed, but the hand on Shin's shoulder carried in it the specific weight of a man who has spent his entire adult life communicating consequence through geometry. "David," Jae-won said. "The Koreatown Investment Board is asking for you." David Shin looked at the hand on his shoulder. Then at Jae-won. Then quickly at Chloe. Something had just been communicated to him that had nothing to do with the investment board. "Of course," Shin said and left. Jae-won removed his hand. He stood beside her at the window looking out at the city lights, and for a moment neither of them spoke. "You didn't have to do that," Chloe said. "I know. I was handling it. I know that too." Another silence. The lights of Los Angeles spread out below them, indifferent and beautiful. "He touched you," Jae-won said. His voice was even. Entirely controlled. But beneath the control, like a current below still water, was something that pulled. "It was nothing," Chloe said. "To you perhaps." He looked at her. "To me it wasn't." She should have left it there. She should have said good night and found Sung-hyun and asked him to call her a car. She should have done the sensible, protective thing and created distance between herself and the thing she could feel building in the air between them like static before a storm. Instead she said, Jae-won. It was the first time she had used his name without the honorific. It landed differently than she intended it to. Or perhaps exactly as she intended it to. He looked at her. Thank you, she said. He nodded once. He held her gaze for a moment longer than he needed to. Then he said quietly, Go home, Chloe. I'll have a car brought around. She went home. She sat in the back of the car his driver brought around and pressed her face into her hands for a moment and breathed. This was getting complicated. The complication deepened on a Tuesday 3 weeks later when Chloe was leaving the office at 6:30 and walked to the parking structure on the 3rd level where she had finally started driving to work because the bus had made her late twice and Sung-hyun had tactfully suggested, once, that the organization could arrange parking for her. She was on the 2nd level when she heard them. 2 men talking in Korean, close enough that the sound carried through the concrete columns. She understood Korean moderately, enough to follow the structure of a conversation if not every word. She understood enough to know, within about 15 seconds of careful stillness behind a parked sedan, that these men were not employees of the Kang group. She understood, within about 30 more seconds, that they were discussing her specifically. Her name. Her schedule. The route she typically used. She did not understand every word. She understood enough. She did not run. Running would have told them she had heard. She walked steadily back to the elevator, rode it to the lobby, returned to the security desk and told the guard calmly and specifically that there were 2 men on the 2nd level of the parking structure who were not Kang Group employees and who should be investigated. Then she called Sung-hyun. Sung-hyun arrived in the lobby in 4 minutes. He looked at her face and asked no unnecessary questions. Stay here, he said. He made one call, brief in Korean. Then he looked at her. Mr. Kang is on his way down. Jae-won appeared from the private elevator 90 seconds later. He crossed the lobby with the controlled speed of a man who is not running because running would require having been afraid, and he looked at her with an intensity that was the closest thing to uncovered feeling she had seen from him since the night in the red dress. Are you hurt? No. What did you hear? She told him. Clearly. Her name, the word for schedule in Korean, the phrase that she thought was approximate route but might have been normal route, and one phrase she had understood unambiguously because it was simple Korean and she had learned it early, take her. His face did not change. But his hands at his sides closed into fists. Sung-hyun, he said without looking away from her. Level 2. 2 men. I want them alive. Sung-hyun left. Jae-won looked at her. Come upstairs, he said. What's happening? Come upstairs and I'll explain. She went upstairs. She sat in the chair across from his desk in the 32nd floor office, the one she had sat in the day she accepted the job, and she watched him stand at the window with his back to her for a moment before he turned around. There is a man named Hwang Do-suk, he said. He controls territory in the San Gabriel Valley. We have been in a disagreement about a property acquisition for 8 months. He knows that direct confrontation is not productive. So he looks for other pressure points. I'm a pressure point, Chloe said. You work for me, Jae-won said. In his logic that makes you leverage. I'm a financial analyst, she said. I have nothing to do with whatever disagreement. In his logic, Jae-won said again, it doesn't matter. He looked at her directly. I should have considered this sooner. I didn't, and I'm telling you that plainly because you deserve the plain version. Chloe sat with that for a moment. The plain version. She had, she thought, been given the plain version from the beginning, more of it than she had expected. He had not lied to her. He had structured her work cleanly and held to the structure. He had warned her about the contours of his world without pretending they didn't exist. None of that changed the fact that 2 men had been in a parking garage memorizing her schedule. What happens now, she said. Now you don't go home alone, he said. I'm assigning security. I don't want security. I know. I'm serious, Jae-won. I'm not going to live with bodyguards following me everywhere because your business dispute. Chloe. He said her name the same way she had said his, the night of the gala, with a weight in it that stopped the sentence. He crossed from the window to the desk and he stood in front of her, and he looked at her with the face of a man who has just run out of a particular kind of patience. I will not allow something to happen to you because of my world. I will not let that happen. Tell me what you need to feel safe and I will provide it. But I will not send you home alone tonight. The firmness of it. The edge of something beneath it that was neither threat nor manipulation but something rawer, something that had to do, she understood, with the photograph lying face down on his desk, with the 14 months since, with a man who had watched something precious be taken from his world and was not prepared to watch it again. She was quiet for a moment. "I'll stay in a hotel," she said. "Tonight only. While you figure out the security arrangement. And I want to talk to you about what the arrangement looks like before you implement it. I'm not going to be managed without being consulted." Something in him settled. "Just slightly." "Agreed," he said. Sung-hyun arranged the hotel. It was of course not a normal hotel. It was a suite on the 17th floor of a Koreatown property that the Kang Group owned, which meant the security was both excellent and invisible. Chloe sat on the edge of the bed at 11 p.m. with her shoes off and her phone in her hands and her heart doing something that had nothing to do with the parking garage. She called her mother. "Ma," she said when her mother picked up, "I need to ask you something." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. When did you know with Baba? How did you know it was real and not just," she searched for the word, "proximity?" Her mother was quiet for a moment. Then she said, with the gentleness of a woman who had raised a daughter alone for 15 years and understood the specific texture of the question being asked. "When I stopped being able to imagine what my face looked like to anyone else. When his face was the only mirror I trusted." Chloe sat with that in the dark of the hotel room for a long time. The security arrangement, when she and Jae-won discussed it the next morning, was a compromise. A driver. One, not a team. Discreet. She kept her own schedule, her own decisions. The driver was available but not obligatory. She retained the right to use her own judgment. She used her own judgment 3 days later to be in the office at 8 p.m. when she heard a commotion on the floor below her that was not the normal sound of a building at night. Later she would learn the full shape of what happened. Hwang Do-suk, frustrated by the failure of the parking garage approach and the subsequent discovery that the two men had been intercepted, had escalated. He had sent a message, not subtle, not indirect. 3 men through a service entrance, armed, looking for leverage in the most immediate sense. The building's security had been faster. Sung-hyun's people had been faster still. What Chloe knew in the moment was gunfire on a floor below her, then silence, then Sung-hyun's voice in her doorway saying, "Please come with me right now." He took her to the private floor, the top floor, Jae-won's floor, where a safe room sat behind a bookcase like something out of a story and where Sung-hyun installed her with a water bottle and his phone number and the information that Mr. Kang was handling things and she should wait. She waited for 45 minutes. She was not calm but she was controlled, which she had learned long ago was more useful than calm. When Jae-won came through the door he was in his shirt sleeves. There was a cut above his right eyebrow that had been cleaned but not properly dressed, and his eyes found her immediately, the same way they had found her in the lobby of the parking garage, and he crossed the room and stopped in front of her. "You're not hurt," he said. It was not quite a question. "No. You are?" she said. She looked at his eyebrow. "It's nothing. Sit down and let me look at it." He sat down. She found a first aid kit in the bathroom. This room had a bathroom because of course it did, and she cleaned the cut properly and put a butterfly strip on it while he sat still and let her do it, which was itself a kind of extraordinary thing because she had the sense that Kang Jae-won did not typically sit still and let anyone tend to him. When she was done he looked up at her. She was close. The closeness of someone who has just been performing a careful, delicate task who has not yet stepped back. His eyes were dark and direct and the look in them was the same one she had first seen at the gala, the one she had been running alternate explanations for ever since. "I said something to you once," he said quietly. "At the gala. I said warning in general. I want you to understand what I meant." She did not move. "Tell me." "I meant that from the night you hung up on me something changed. I don't know how to describe it simply except to say that I noticed you. Not as an employee, not as a variable. As a person. As..." He paused, and the pause had the quality of a man accustomed to precision discovering the limits of precision. "As someone I didn't expect to find. And I didn't prepare for that, and it's been 7 weeks of not preparing for it, and tonight I need you to know it because I'm not willing to keep it on the other side of silence while people try to use you to reach me." Chloe stood very still. Outside the window, Los Angeles was doing what it always did at 11 at night, indifferent and glittering. "Say something," he said. "You told me once that you don't date," she started. "I know what I said." His voice was even. "I said it 8 years ago to a reporter and I have been repeating the version of myself that sentence describes ever since. It was a performance that became a habit that became a wall." He looked at her. "You are the first person who has made me want to stop performing." She breathed. "Jae-won. I need you to understand something." "Tell me." "I am not available to be the thing that redeems you. I'm not a project or a second chance or a lesson. I'm a person with my own life and my own needs and my own fears, and if this is going somewhere, it needs to go there because you see that. Not because I wore a red dress. The red dress, he said, was how I saw what had been true for weeks. She looked at him. He looked at her. The room held still. I'm not going to run, she said. I'm telling you what I need because I need you to know it from the beginning. I know, he said. And I'm telling you that I hear it. That I want to earn the right to stand next to you. Not own you. Not protect you from a distance. Stand next to you. If you'll allow it. There was a quality to the silence that followed that was different from every silence that had come before it. It was not the silence of two people managing distance. It was the silence of two people deciding to close it. She sat down next to him on the couch. Not against him. Beside him. Close enough to feel the warmth. The photograph, she said softly. On your desk. Her name was Sora, he said. She died in a car accident. She was 31. I'm sorry. I know you are. He was quiet for a moment. She was kind. She deserved better than the life I gave her. And the guilt of that, he stopped. I convinced myself that the wall was for her memory. But it was for me. It was easier to be the man who didn't feel things than to feel them and have to carry them. Chloe was quiet. She thought about her mother saying the only mirror I trusted. She thought about 8 months of rejection emails. She thought about the $4.37 and the landline phone and the red end call button. She thought about the fact that the most significant thing she had done in the last 2 months was hang up a phone. She reached out and covered his hand with hers. He turned his hand over and held it. They sat like that for a long time. Not speaking. Not needing to. The city turning slowly below them, indifferent and glittering and entirely unaware that something was beginning on the 34th floor of a building it would never look up at. The following weeks moved differently. Not faster, carefully. With the deliberateness of two people who had both, in their separate ways, learned the cost of moving without care. He had lunch with her twice a week in the satellite office, bringing food from a restaurant down the block that she had mentioned offhand once liking. He did not make it a gesture. He made it a habit. There is a difference. Gestures are performances. Habits are what you do when no one is watching, and when Chloe began to understand that Kang Jae-won's habits were shifting toward her, that she was becoming part of the architecture of his ordinary days, she understood it more deeply than any declaration. He took her to the Santa Monica Pier on a Sunday because she had said, once, briefly, that she had lived in Los Angeles for 15 years and never been. He stood next to her while she ate kettle corn and looked at the ocean and did not say anything particularly meaningful, but he was there, which was the whole point, which was all of it. She met Sung-hyun properly, the real Sung-hyun, not the professional one, over a working lunch and discovered he had been trying quietly to protect her from the beginning. He's not easy, Sung-hyun told her when Jae-won stepped out to take a call. But he is consistent. And for someone like him, consistency is what love looks like. Her mother made dinner for all three of them on a Saturday. Jae-won arrived with flowers, 2 bouquets, one for her mother and one for Chloe, which was the kind of detail that most people miss but that Senegalese mothers do not miss, and Chloe's mother looked at him with the focused assessment of a woman who has managed her daughter's world alone for many years, and then she set both bouquets in water and said in Wolof to Chloe, while Jae-won was removing his shoes at the door. He looked for the second vase. Which was not a comment about flowers. The Hwang Do-suk situation resolved. Jae-won handled it with a combination of legal pressure, negotiated territory transfer, and the kind of quiet, structural force that leaves no visible marks but is felt throughout an entire network for years afterward. Hwang Do-suk would not try again. The parking garage men had been, Sung-hyun told her this with the careful neutrality of a man who was giving her truth without detail, persuaded that their interests lay elsewhere. Chloe did not ask for more than that. She had drawn her lines and they were holding. 6 months after the first lunch in the corner booth of Rosie's Diner, on an evening in March when the last of winter was leaving the Los Angeles air with the reluctant grace of a guest who knows the party has ended but keeps looking for reasons to stay, Kang Jae-won took Chloe to the rooftop of the building where he had his penthouse. There were lights strung between the planters up there, small and warm, and the city spread in every direction, and she understood now that this was the kind of man he was, thought about every element in advance. The outdoor heater so she would not be cold in her dress, the champagne that was her preference and not his, the absence of any other person on the roof because he had considered, and correctly, that she would want the honesty of privacy. He stood with her and looked at the city for a moment. Then he turned to face her. "I'm going to ask you something," he said. "And I want you to know that whatever your answer is, the job is yours and the driver is yours and none of what I'm about to say changes any of that. Jae-won, she said. I need to say it properly. I know. I'm listening. He looked at her. You were the first person to tell me no and mean it. The first person who saw exactly what I was and didn't flinch from it and didn't reshape herself around it. You kept your shape. And in keeping yours, you gave me back mine, the version of it that I had stopped believing existed. He paused. I'm in love with you. I have been for longer than I admitted to myself. And I want to build something with you. Something real, something you choose every day because it is worth choosing, not because it is safe or convenient or because I have arranged the circumstances. I want to earn the choice. I want to keep earning it. He reached into his jacket and produced a ring. Simple. White gold. A single stone that was neither ostentatious nor modest. The ring of a man who had thought very carefully about what she would actually want to wear. Will you let me try? He said. Chloe looked at the ring. She looked at his face. She thought, briefly and completely, about everything that had brought her to this rooftop. The flower, the blisters, the $4.37, the red phone button, the red dress, the parking garage, the safe room, the butterfly strip over his eyebrow, the second vase. Yes, she said. He slid the ring onto her finger with hands that were, she noticed, not entirely steady. She kissed him. He held her with the care of a man who has learned, the hard way and late, the particular weight of things that are precious, not possessively, not desperately, but with a steadiness that said, I am here and I will remain here, and this is the truest thing I have. Below them, Los Angeles moved through its Friday night, indifferent and glittering, entirely unaware. And 9 months later, in the particular blue light of early morning in a private room at Cedars-Sinai, with Kang Jae-won holding her hand so tightly that she would joke about it for months afterward, and Sung-hyun pacing the hallway outside like an expectant uncle, and her mother somewhere in the waiting room probably reorganizing the furniture, Chloe Diallo gave birth to their daughter. She was small and indignant and had her mother's dark eyes and her father's infuriating jaw, and when the nurse placed her in Jae-won's arms he held her the way he had reached for the ring, with hands that weren't entirely steady, with a face that was doing something it had not done in 14 months, something that was closer to whole. He looked at Chloe. She was exhausted and luminous and watching him with the quiet certainty of a woman who has trusted her own judgment enough times to know when it is right. You should have left a message, he said, which was not what she expected, and she laughed. Actually laughed, despite everything, because it was the most thing he could have said. Next time, she said, I will. He looked back down at their daughter. Outside the window, the city was beginning its morning. The sun was coming up over the San Gabriel Mountains, spilling light west across the basin, reaching the Figueroa Street neighborhood where a diner called Rosie's was opening its doors for the breakfast rush, where a landline phone sat on a counter near the register, patient and ordinary, entirely unaware of everything it had started.